Welcome everybody to CalExitCon 12. This is our 11th conference. The first one was 2.0. We've now had 10 conferences. Everybody can watch those videos. You can see how people have gone from novice activist to expert. Not to embarrass anybody, but if you need to see how good these conferences go, just talk to someone called Sue Hirsch. Sue Hirsch had trouble with her first speech. Watch Sue the last two videos. She's outstanding. Sue has done so well. And I'm only picking on Sue to make a point. We all get better working together. These conferences are about expressing ideas, they're about sharing, and they're about training everybody to express themselves. I can't tell you how relieved I was to have a conversation yesterday with Jason Wright, where he said, "Hey, Marcus, I already got a newspaper reporter ready to cover a story, but I got a problem. They're going to want to interview someone in either Sacramento, LA, San Diego, the Bay, or the Central Valley." And I said, "Jason, that's not an issue. We have intelligent people who are good speaking in all of those places because of the practice here at these conferences." I'll stop there, turn it over to Daniel for some new rules, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Okay, so basically Marcus and I came up with California Independence Movement Preamble. The reason we did this is because we kind of discussed this whole concept of that we didn't want discussions to go off topic, and we wanted to have at least a framework of our mission statement, if you want to call it that, of what we're all about and what we all agree on and that we should agree on, because then it goes off topic to something that is not a part of the CIM mission statement, if you will. So basically it's very simple. There's two preambles and it goes like this. We in the CIM recognize, acknowledge, and agree upon these two founding principles. The United States is broken and it can no longer be fixed. Therefore, California has no other choice than to secede. The second is the CIM shall achieve California independence only through peaceful means as opposed to militant or violent actions. So that's basically what the topic of the discussion. We don't want to go off on we're going to secede with taking arms, being violent. We're going to do it peacefully, in parallel, like the peaceful protest. There will always be people who are going to be violent and stuff, but we do not want to be associated with that in our movement. And we don't want to be this. I think we all agree, most of us here for a long time, that one of the main reasons that we want California to secede is that we can't fix the U.S. government anymore. It's sinking, it's down. So this is something that we all agree, and we don't want to put in the discussion of, oh yeah, but if the Senate changes, oh yeah, but if the judiciary does this or that. No, it's not going to happen. We all know that, and so we're on that decline. So I hope you all agree, and I will give you a chance after to say your word on that. Then next, what I wanted to put, you all had the rules, but some of you might not have had them. This is just to make the whole conference, more successful and flow, in a way that's interesting to the audience. So there's a few rules here. Everyone will be muted when a person is to speak. They will be unmuted by the controller. Every conference will have a controller who operates the muting function and a timekeeper who assists the controller in keeping track of time of the speaker. Only the speaker and the controller and the timekeeper will be unmuted. This will allow us to make sure that everyone speaks for their allotted time and that we're able to quickly move to a new speaker. Videos that move quickly from person to person keep viewers interested longer. The timekeeper and the controller are unmuted so that if the speaker goes off topic, they can gently ask the speaker to get back on topic. If they persist, they will be muted during their allotted speaking time. People are less interested in watching a video if someone goes off topic on a tangent. Videos lose viewers the moment someone sees that. Everyone has a different viewpoint on the variety of important topics, but there are certain things that we can't seem to tolerate, which is goes on to the preamble that I just stated. So those are the basic rules. Marcus, should I have everyone come on and agree to it, or is that necessary?
No, let me address that. So the way this works is projects. This discussion, these Cal Exit conferences, only exist because Daniel had a vision. He said, we need to do this, and he asked for help, and I backed him. And many of you have had conversations with me. I'm not about boards anymore. I love that there's 4 groups. I think there's 4 groups. That's great. I don't want to make any more. I back Hal on the website project. I back Hannah on her Pact project. I back Joe on his Pact project. I back Daniel on his conference. Define it how you want. I'll back you. These conferences are Daniel's vision. We've had 12 of them. We've had big people come. So I'm all about backing a vision. If Daniel thinks this is the right way to run these conferences, that's the way we're going to do it. You don't necessarily have to agree. If you want to say something different in your project, go ahead. But here at these conferences, he's right. People are watching even more now. We need to really get our game even more tight. Daniel's taken us to our 12th conference, and I believe that when he says we can go Young Turks level, I think that's the next evolution. I think he's taking us there. And I want to say thank you to everybody for being patient with Daniel as he moves us to a better performing platform, which benefits us all. I'll leave it there.
Great. So do you want to introduce, Marcus, do you want to also speak about the 2 topics we're going to talk about?
Yeah, and then I'm going to pass it to you. So
okay.
We're going to cover 2 topics, basically related from the same thing. Everybody knows America's burning. Last month, we talked about how America's falling apart because it couldn't provide guidance on a pandemic. This month, we're talking about, is America falling apart because it can't handle justice? It's sending troops into the streets. There's chaos. Cities are burning. Are we watching the collapse of America right now? Is that happening? And that's question 1. Do you see on TV America's collapsing? Question 2, which will be the second panel, is if America's collapsing, does that mean the dollar's collapsing? And if it is, what options do we as Californians have? So the first topic, Daniel, I want if you would take us through everybody and ask them, watching what you've seen on TV now, do you think America is literally in collapse right now and that secession may be coming soon? Everybody should have 3 to 5 minutes for that topic. They can say whatever their perspective is on that. We'll go through that, and then we'll go to the next topic on currency after we've heard from everybody. I'm kicking it back to you, Daniel.
So for the first topic, I think it's important. I mean, we spoke about this with Marcus. It's important. I wanted to start this, and if you would be patient, I hope it will work with the share screen of a interview on MSNBC, main news media. Actually, the first time that I have seen experts and the main media actually use words like collapse of the United States, like fascism, like autocratic, all these things. And this was on just a couple of days on MSNBC, on Morning Joe. And this is really pertinent to us right now because we've talked about this, all of us, Hal Shankar, we've all agreed, Matt, for years, like since we started this movement, that we believed the U.S. was collapsing, that it was a failed nation. But we always had a hard time. And just as recently as a couple of weeks with Marcus, I said, how do we convince Californians that the U.S. is a broken system and we need to get out? It's a logical, easy argument for us, but for Californians, they don't get it. They're still attached to the system. So this is important because for the first time now, we have mainstream media starting the conversation of a decline of the U.S. Although they're not talking about independent movements or this is just the beginning of acknowledgments, which they've never done. They have never done. They've always said we can fix it. If we should change the Senate, if we this. Now the conversation is starting here. So this is very important for us to notice as a movement, because where we were a niche movement before, now we can actually point out the mainstream saying some of the same things that we're saying, not as a radical yet for independence and stuff, but that's, for me, it's the starting wave that we have to catch and ride with it till the end. So I'm going to try to share this interview, if you bear with me for 10 minutes, because this will actually be the help the topic go along. So let me try to share this. Share. Can you guys see?
Yes.
See that breaking news?
Yes.
You
Yeah,
can.
we can see it.
Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna play it. Play.
Following President Trump's threat to use active duty troops to combat protests and his administration's violent clearing of a peaceful protest for a photo op, the Washington Post reported that a number of CIA veterans who monitored crackdowns abroad see troubling parallels in President Trump's handling of the protests. The report reads this way: the scenes have been disturbingly familiar to CIA analysts accustomed to monitoring scenes of societal unraveling abroad. The massing of protesters, the ensuing crackdowns, and the awkwardly staged displays of strength by a leader determined to project authority. In interviews and posts on social media in recent days, current and former U.S. intelligence officials have expressed dismay at the similarity between events at home and the signs of decline or democratic regression they were trained to detect in other nations. One of those former CIA analysts is Gail Helt. She was responsible for tracking developments in China and Southeast Asia, and told the Post she has seen this kind of violence before, saying, quote, "This is what autocrats do. This is what happens in countries before a collapse. It really does unnerve me." And Gail joins us now. She is now a professor at King University in Tennessee. Also with us this morning, author of the book entitled Surviving Autocracy, staff writer at The New Yorker, Masha Gessen, and author and staff writer at The Atlantic, Ann Applebaum. Her recent piece for the magazine is entitled History Will Judge the Complicit, in which she argues that Republican leaders abandon their principles in support of a, quote, immoral and dangerous president. Gail, let me begin with you and your quote to the Washington Post about the parallels you see in the United States today and what you've seen abroad over many years. What specifically concerns you here?
Well, I think it culminated for me a little bit after I made those comments, actually. But when I saw President Trump walk to the front of that church after he violently cleared protesters, standing there holding up a Bible, it just reminded me of every image I've seen, for example, of Kim Jong-un standing on the top of Mount Haktu or sitting on that white horse. And the imagery that it conjured, when Kim Jong-un does that, it's to conjure a divine image. And that's what it seemed like Donald Trump was doing. And that really, really unnerved me. And that comes on at the end of 3 years of him eroding our trust in our democratic institutions, eroding the institutions themselves. We don't believe our press anymore. We don't believe in our intelligence community anymore. We don't respect our civil servants anymore. Donald Trump doesn't respect the Constitution anymore. And all of those things coming together, honestly, I'm terrified.
Ann Applebaum, we've been talking about your extraordinary piece in The Atlantic for some time, and it seems to underline the fact that our founders, they anticipated an out-of-control chief executive. They anticipated an out-of-control president. In fact, they put in Madisonian safeguards to make sure that there were checks and balances to check would-be tyrants. What they never imagined in their darkest dreams, their worst scenarios, would be a compliant Congress. That's which you were actually talking about yesterday on Twitter, and also what your piece delved into. How concerned should we be?
Well, I think very concerned. And, you know, the issue is not just the compliant Congress, it's also compliant top officials. You know, we are used to the idea that certain institutions in a liberal democracy are nonpartisan. The State Department, the Army, the CIA, you know, these are institutions that serve whoever is in power, no matter, you know, what he or she does, whichever political party they serve to. Since he has taken over the White House, Trump has sought to change the nature of these institutions and make them answerable to him alone. That's what we saw on Lafayette Square when he tried to use the army and to evoke, you know, use army leaders beside him to evoke the idea that somehow the army was on his side, that it was a partisan institution. You know, that's what we see when he downgrades, you know, when he insults the CIA, when he insults the FBI. And the fact that leaders of those institutions, and as you say, leaders of Congress, have not fought back, have not stood out, have not tried to object to any of this, this is an important sign of democratic decline. These are people who are no longer willing, because of a variety of reasons that I described in the article, no longer willing to stand up for institutions that they know are being damaged and for values that they know are right.
Anne, could you have ever imagined, and this is not a leading question, I'm just curious, because I didn't ever imagine, and I guess it's just a great lack of imagination on my part, but did you ever imagine an American president in this time first attacking the press as enemies of the people like Stalin did, then attacking an independent federal judiciary, questioning the legitimacy of federal judges when they ruled against his travel bans, his Muslim bans, and then attacking our intelligence agencies, vicious attacks against the CIA, the FBI, and the Republican Party standing quietly by as he did it, acquiescing.
Yes, look, there are reasons why he's attacking those kinds of institutions, because those are the institutions that are capable of holding him to account. You know, the free press can investigate whether or not his companies are making money off his presidency. The judiciary can turn down or counter things that he says, or laws that he passes. You know, and his attempt to limit those institutions is in a way of trying to expand his power. Everybody who's in Congress right now knows that. This is not a question of, you know, people in the world who might vote for Trump because they don't pay much attention to politics and the economy was doing great before and so on. No, these are people who understand the Constitution extremely well. They know that Trump has overstepped the bounds. Many of them say so off the record. Many of them say so to their Democratic colleagues in Congress. Nevertheless, they have been unwilling, a combination of desire to be close to power, fear of losing power themselves, desire to conform, fear of being embarrassed or attacked on Twitter, and sometimes using even a kind of Vichyite argument, which is that the other side is worse. In other words, we have to collaborate with Donald Trump no matter what he does, because the left is so dangerous and so negative and so damaging to American life that we have to prevent it. This is the kind of argument that has been used in occupied countries in the past. This is how, when France was occupied by the Nazis, this is how Vichy was used with the Nazi collaborators in France. This is how they justified what they did. We have to collaborate with Germany because the alternative is so much worse.
Masha Gessen, you have been a consistent and courageous critic of Vladimir Putin and his regime in Russia, and it does take real courage, as we know, to be a consistent critic of Vladimir Putin. What do you see in the streets of America over the last 10 days as someone who has studied autocracy abroad?
What I'm seeing is the performance of fascism. Donald Trump, I think, is showing us, and he has told us before, but it's never been quite as clear and quite as frightening. He's showing us what he thinks power looks like and sounds like. He thinks that power looks like unidentified troops on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial or guarding the White House. And this, I think, is particularly frightening. We're seeing this display of military force and a display of refusal to be accountable in any way. The fact that these troops are refusing to identify themselves, the fact that they're unmarked, is absolutely terrifying to me. He thinks that power looks like Black Hawk helicopters being used to clear protesters. He thinks it looks like tear gas being used to clear protesters. He thinks it sounds like the word dominate, which he repeated over and over again on his phone call with governors. And this is a performance of power, and it's a performance of fascism. Right? Everything that we know about fascism, it is the power of, it is power that is concentrated in the hands of one nation, one race, and it brutally suppresses dissent. We're seeing that now. He has chosen his road, whether he's capable of grasping the concept or not.
So, Masha, you've described this as a performance of fascism. What comes next in the practice of fascism, and do you see that headed in this direction?
I don't make predictions, but I can tell you what we are observing. What we're observing, a power grab always begins as a performance. Right? A claim is made, and then the autocrat sees, or the aspiring autocrat sees whether the claim is accepted, right? Whether the performance is believed. That's what we're asking right now, and I think that the signs are extremely worrisome. We have seen some voices from the military object to this claim to unitary power and to the right to use military force in the United States. But we have not seen an appropriate reaction from Congress. We have not seen an insurrection within the White House, which is what we should be seeing. We should be seeing this power claim being rejected.
So, Gail.
Okay. So that's the interview. Let me stop the share. All right. So we're back. Sorry if it was a little bit long, but I wanted to make a point on this because I wanted everyone to notice the language that's very different from what it has been in mainstream media. They've used collapse, they've used fascism, autocracy. We've never had these words said on national TV. And I wanted you to see the tone of these reporters because and the experts, because they're very worried. You can tell for the first time, they're not saying we're gonna, oh, how can we fix this? How can we do that? But this is happening, and what are the next steps? And they're worried. And every time he asks a question, how worried are you? They would say, I'm very worried, I'm frightened, I'm this. And these are people that have been doing this for 40 years. They've written books, they've seen other governments, democratic governments go into autocracy and fascism. And so this was interesting, really, because it's the first time we've seen a change in language where they're actually saying these words that normally would not be accepted in, in mainstream media. So that's why I wanted to show that particular thing. It's something that we've all seen. Now they're putting it back to 3 years of Trump. I believe, and I think a lot of you believe, that it started happening 30 years ago. This is the culmination of all of this, and is, you know, the symptom of it, and is the radicalization of 30 years of doing it. So I want to give everyone a chance to respond to the protest or to this, whatever you feel is going on. But topic being, do you see now that there is a collapse in the United States, and that the media are acknowledging that, and that I think we're at a new level where our movement is starting to parallel to what they're acknowledging, although we're much more ahead. But that now we can actually say, the United States is a broken system. We can go to that interview and say, look, that expert just said it. He's got 40 years of experience. Don't trust me. Right there. And I think there's going to be a lot more of that on that discussion. It took protests. It took ridiculous action where it was here before, but nobody wanted to say it. So now we're at this time I think, of a turning point for our movement and for the, what's going to be the collapse of the U.S., however long it takes. So I'm going to go round by the videos, the images I see. So I'm going to go through that. I'm going to go to Sue first and have you respond to that. So let me unmute you. Sue, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Oh, I get to be first this time. This is unusual
You get to be first because you're first on my screen.
for me. You wanted to, I wanted to speak to what you just said, that this has been 30 years in the making. Yes, that's absolutely right. This did not start in 2016 with the inauguration of our current leaders. It started many, many years ago with the Constitution, which was written up, authored by in power, and they were rich white men, and therefore women and Black people did not get the vote. Black people got to be slaves. And that was no great deal. They had to fight for the right to vote. So that wasn't us giving it to them. That was them winning something that we called a right. When you have to fight for it, it's called a privilege. And the fact that only rich white men had it, that made it into rich white privilege. And that we need to make sure that we discontinue as a nation of California, because we can be so much better than that. And our people deserve so much better than that. And people and women and minorities, there are people just as much as rich white people, because we were all immigrants coming into California, and therefore it was immigrants who built the US, but they also built the economy of California even more, because this is where they came in. We have all the ports here in California, or we have the biggest and best ones anyway, and most of them. And so they came in through here, US, but they were the backbone of our economy. They built the economy. They continue to this day to build our economy. They are shop owners and restaurant owners and dry cleaners, and so that we can go off to work and earn big bucks doing whatever we do, and then come home to a nice clean house and clean kids. This started a long time ago, and Trump, his inauguration, made it all worse, because a lot of us recognized him for the bigot that he was, and we all, when he was inaugurated, I won't say elected, because I believe that was a treasonous thing, that, it was, and it was a cheat.
Sue, you got 2
I
minutes
believe
left.
I believe there was a lot of, okay. Anyway, I wanted to say mostly that, and mostly, yes, this America, this nation, so it's America, it's collapsing. When your own government starts aiming weapons of mass destruction at you, or weapons like rubber bullets and gas and things at its own people, that is no longer your government. That's a government that no longer cares about you, and is proving that they do not want to be your government anymore, and they don't deserve to be. They're proving that they want to be a dictatorship and a fascist rulership, whatever they want to call themselves. That's not a government. So yeah, America is going to be shit, and with that collapse is probably going to collapse, all the regular institutions, including the monetary ones that you're used to as an American citizen to come up with something new to take its place. And California is in a really great position to offer that to its own citizens and to the rest of the US and to the rest of the world, in fact. And Colexit has some great plans for that. I have some intense admiration for the people I see here on my state and taking some serious leadership roles and coming up with some really great ideas for what to do next and where we go from here as a nation of California, and how we plan to be rock stars of new and better governing. Yes, my time is up. I see that now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Perfect.
Perfect, Sue. Perfect, Sue.
You were kind of breaking up, Sue, but we heard, we heard what you were saying, because it would cut back into you. So thank you, Sue. Next, we're gonna go to Walter, and I'm gonna unmute you, Walter. Mute to unmute. Walter, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first, I agree wholeheartedly with everything that you and Sue said. I think we are on the right track, and I think it is timely. I'm a historian, so let me make some historical points. Going along with what Sue said, it was not only women and African Americans who were left out of the Constitution, but also Native peoples. And I think that some of the things that have been done in the California independence movement to acknowledge the role of Native Californians and Native people here is extremely important. The second thing I'd like to mention is that empires are inherently unstable, and they always collapse. And there's an important book written by Paul Kennedy, who's a professor of history at Yale University, called When Empires Collapse. And he compared different empires. And the United States is definitely showing a lot of those very same characteristics that he talked about with the collapse of other empires through history. The second thing that I want to point out is this book by Professor Francis Buckley called American Secession. And if you haven't read it, you need to. I've written a review of the book. If anybody wants to look at my review of it, I'll be happy to share that with you. He makes the point that when empires collapse, they collapse very quickly. And I think the Soviet Union is a perfect example. If anybody had been asked even 5 years before that the Soviet Union would not exist by 1992, people would say, well, no, that's crazy. But yet it happened. And so when empires collapse, they collapse very quickly. And so I think what we're starting to see is signs of that here. I want to point out that one of the crucial things that happens when an empire collapses is the army changes allegiance. And we saw that certainly in the Russian Revolution, where the Tsar sent out the army to attack protesters in St. Petersburg. And instead of firing on the crowd of protesters, the army turned around and joined them. And so that was a violent situation, which we certainly want to avoid. But yet it does show that when we see things like what's happened just in this last week of leading generals speaking out and saying, no, this is not what should be done, I think that's an important marker as well. So all of these kinds of things I think are extremely important, and we need to have that context. Okay, that's it.
Great. Thank you, Walter. You still had a minute or two, but that's fine. But that you were very precise. Thank you for all that. And I was not aware about the book America's Secession, but I will definitely get it. And
yes, he's a professor of law at George Mason University, and he what is very important is that he compiles all these statistics economic statistics, political statistics, um, uh, questions of happiness, and he especially applies that to California. And he said California would be economically much better off as an independent nation, and that in terms of happiness, that people in the smaller nations are actually happier than people in the largest nations. And so I think this goes to a larger issue than just California or even just the United States, but that in the world today, I think the world today would be better off if the big nations were broken up, whether it's the United States, China, Russia, you know, you name it, Brazil. I mean, we see the big nations are the ones that have the big problems. And so Buckley has some very good analysis of that as well.
Good point. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Walter. So now we're going to go next on my screen is Hannah. So let me unmute you. Can you unmute yourself, Hannah? Because it's... Yeah.
I'm on mute. I'm on mute.
There you go. Okay.
Okay. Okay. You know, there was an article today in Politico, an analysis, which concludes that the U.S. Senate may very well be split by the Democrats. So, and then Walter makes up a good point. I want to remind people to, I actually shared online on the email group a PDF, and one of the PDFs, you remember, I go and urge you to read the article called Revolt of the Generals, where, and I'm actually debating right now, writing an article on the topic of whether or not Donald Trump has control of the United States military. Because I think the odds are he's effectively lost control. He thinks he can use the military to achieve his political goals inside the United States of America, and I don't believe that's true. I think the military has been running itself for 3 years, in fact, since at least 2017. Now, the question is, so I'm going to bring up a different point, different position. Right now, if I'm betting, okay, I'll give you more than one, I'll give you better than 1-to-1 odds right now that Joe Biden will become the next president of the United States and the Democrats will control the majority of the United States Senate. The question is, will there be civil peace in the United States of America? I've been watching very closely in the last week of demonstrations, and you have noticed time after time again in many, many cities, protesters received violence not only from police officers, but from individuals, supposed members of the public, threatening them with weapons, driving into them with vehicles, etc. All right. Threatening them with weapons from guns, knives, a bow and arrow, you know, literally every form of deadly weapon you can imagine. And of course, the police sometimes reacting, sometimes not. But it's all been caught on videotape. Something like I think just had an email today, message today or article today, 476 episodes of police brutality have been recorded now on video in just the last week. There's one person who's making a database of all the evidence. There's been demonstrations for Black Lives Matter in 175 cities and towns. Some of them literally villages, as well as major cities. So, and one other thing to remind you is the economy is still in very bad shape. Massive unemployment, and what I find most troubling is young people under 25, African Americans, Latino women are some of the groups that have really not received any real restoration of their economic security. They're still largely unemployed. So the question really has to be, if the Democrats do take power and if they have a mandate for change on all kinds of issues, will they be allowed to actually use their power, or will these thugs go about trying to topple governments? We saw that in Michigan State. where the state legislature was shut down by just a handful of armed people. I actually even wonder whether or not it's not too early to talk about defending California from, frankly, some of these people in our own state. But that is the question I would say. You want me to quit?
And give us your conclusion on that thought.
My conclusion is I can't say. I think it's likely that, but I think what is likely is basically civil war will break out in certain states because the Republicans, or particularly Donald Trump and his supporters, are simply not going to give up power, either literally or figuratively, without in a peaceful manner.
Okay, great. Thanks, Anna. Appreciate it. All right, we're gonna go next to, and this is the gentleman, I don't have the name for with the goatee.
Joe Payne.
No, that's
Joe.
not. No, not Joe Payne. It's
Marcus Poulos?
huh?
Marcus
You yeah, you
Poulos?
with the hand. You with the hand. What's? Oh, hold on. Let me unmute you. Can you unmute?
Okay, I'm unmuted.
What is your name?
Okay, my name is Marcus Poulos.
Marcus Poulos. Okay, I didn't know.
I was the press secretary for Adam Kokesh.
Oh, okay, great.
So, should I go on now?
Yes.
Oh, it's your turn.
Okay, awesome. Well, there's a lot, and I mean an awful lot, to dig into, both from the video, from the speakers, and from all of that. I have a little bit different of a perspective, being that I'm a voluntarist or an anarchist, and I think that all states, no matter what level they are at, are fundamentally illegitimate and unethical. But for the safety of California, I absolutely agree that you need to protect yourself. One of the things that I think that we need to first start with, and I'm going to try to handle this as quickly as I can in the order that it kind of came. Being that I was the press secretary for a relatively popular libertarian presidential candidate, I had access. I got Adam on Kennedy on Fox Business at, which is like prime time. So I managed to get some of that done. That being said, we need to be very careful that anything that they put through any media, I don't care if it's Fox News, MSNBC, CNBC, ABC, any of those places, understand that these are propaganda outlets. They are not there's always going to be a goal. There is always going to be a reason why they're pushing it. So if they seem to be pushing in our direction towards localizing government down to, in this particular case, to California, that means they have an ulterior motive, and they may be trying to sow dissent for the purpose of doing, as Hannah said, trying to get their preferred presidential candidate, which happens to be Joe Biden, into office. So they may be pushing that narrative, trying to say, oh, we've got to avoid civil war, and if we have Donald Trump in, we will not avoid civil war. That being said, I wrote an article that actually featured Marcus, where I talked about avoiding civil war. And in particular, one of the things that during my research for that article, I came upon a guy talking about, be very wary of, from the left perspective, of rooting for civil war. And the reason is because a lot of police, a lot of military are on the right. So being that that's the case, there may be a backlash. There might be a first wave. And if you follow what happened in the Soviet Union, when it went from being Russia to the Soviet Union and had the revolution, there was actually a uprise from the right, which was quickly taken down. So we need to be very careful about that. As for, are we going to be on fire? Absolutely. And it does not matter whether Joe Biden or whoever, because Joe Biden is the person who put forth a lot of the framework for the Patriot Act and many of the things that we all agree are nasty things that they use to strip away our rights. So we need to be very careful who we support. And I'm not here trying to pimp the Libertarian Party or even the Green Party or anything, because I don't think ultimately parties matter. As for the idea of standing up and what we're facing, we need to, as one voice, say, in your particular case in California, we will not allow any authority of any kind, whether it's police, government, whatever it is, to torture and maim our citizens anymore. It needs to stop. And California, by being independent, could say that to Washington and say very clearly, look at how much better we deal with this. Look at our economics. As you're collapsing, we're improving. So much for your red team Republican bull crap working.
Great
There's
point.
my 2 cents for now.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you. And I will note that just on your last statement, just a quick note that if you've been following the news, you saw that Gavin Newsom actually said that it will not happen, that the military will come into California. Kind of what you were saying about that we have to stop. So we already have that mind frame as Californians, and we have leaders that are willing to somewhat, stand up to that. But as an independent California, of course, it would have much more power to do so. So that's a great point. Thanks. So let's go now to the next is Shankar. You're up, Shankar.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
You're good, brother.
Yeah, I'll make it real quick. I must just about agree with everybody that spoke right now. Is America in collapse? Of course it's in collapse. To bring up Mr. Walter's point about the military, yeah, look, the military is not backing Donald Trump up. We had Mattis just downplay the president, and Mattis is a huge figure in the military. I mean, he's got the back of all the branches of military, and when he downplays the president, that means the entire military is not on his back. And we can see that when Trump deploys troops somewhere, the Pentagon recalls him right away, meaning the military has not got his back. So that is a huge plus for us. That's great. That's the United States. That's America. What's CIM going to do? What's CIM doing about it? The iron is getting hot. It's getting almost to temperature, and it's going to be time to strike here in a few months. And when I say that, we've got Marcus coming out with the initiative, and couple that with my project. My project is a candidate roster. I've got 14 candidates running for various political offices up and down the state. Under all the political parties. So that doesn't matter if you're independent, if you're libertarian, if you're Democrat, if you're Republican, it doesn't matter what political party. You see that California is better off on its own. That's the main point of why you are running for office. And it doesn't matter what your political backing is. Now, we couple that with the initiative that Marcus is going on. Guess what? The United States is going to see that California thinks it's better off on its own. The rest of the United States hopefully gets follows its example and starts thinking the same way. So the iron is striking, and it's about to hit. So does it pay me to see America in this injured in this way? Hell no. It's about time. It's about time this is happening. This is a healthy recovery for us. This is the white blood cells finally attacking the virus in the human body right now, and it's a beautiful thing. The best thing I've heard today, is that the president now lives on 1600 Black Lives Matter Plaza, Washington D.C. That is huge. I can't tell you how many times I've marched with BLM. I've done BLM events so many times it brings a tear to my eye because they're always so sad. And this is just, oh God, it feels good. It feels good today. That's all I got to say. Thanks.
Thanks, Shankar. Said with passion, as always. Great. All right, so let me go now. Matt, you are next. Let me unmute you. Okay. Can you talk to see if we can hear you?
Check, check.
Okay.
Check, check.
You're on.
Thank you. Well, thanks for having me on again. I'd like to begin by joining the critique of that U.S. media presentation about this. You know, talking fascism is great, but when they talk about what the U.S. has been up to, they go after CIA analysts. We all know the CIA has been taking point for installing fascists. They don't talk about Arbenz in the Guatemalan 54. They don't talk about Mohammad Mossadegh a few years later in Iran. They don't talk about Salvador Allende in Chile, all of which the CIA took point on overthrowing democratic governments and installing fascist ones. And FBI, go down to the hood and ask them what they think of FBI. They know the score on COINTELPRO. Okay, domestic counterinsurgency. They know it from bloody experience. We are serious about reparations. That is why we have Return California, trying to return land and sovereignty to indigenous Californians. So they know that we're serious about reparations, right? So when someone like Kimberly Jones, offers her critique, and I invite you all to watch it, of the way, and she's critiquing, by the way, the black bourgeoisie. That's right at the beginning of her video.
Matt,
Okay.
Is America falling?
Yeah.
America is becoming itself. The U.S. is becoming what it has always been. And what it is that it's exposing to the world what it is. Its clothing of democracy is falling off, if you would, revealing the sinews of tyranny beneath. So it's becoming itself. Pretty hideous, isn't it? Right? But our communities under attack have always known the score from, being on the receiving end. So how do we in California become ourselves? Well, what do we have to offer to BLM and the Black Liberation Movement? We have a liberation to offer. You don't fight fire with fire. Thank you, Fred Hampton. You don't fight violence with violence. You don't fight civil war with civil war. You fight it all with liberation. You fight it all with liberation. And so that's what we're offering. We have already declared a provisional independence. It's a political placeholder, waiting for the official California government to declare independence. So we're out there holding that place for them. And the proposal has been mooted, and I'm going to be mooting it to tomorrow, hopefully, Sunday in LA, mooting it about A, liberating California, and B, forming a provisional government. Again, a provisional government's a political placeholder. Okay. California had and was empowering a provisional government for a decade, between 1836 and 1846. We had a provisional government, and we made it official. Okay, so all it is a political placeholder until the official government, either one or two things happen. The official government declares independence, or we are recognized by the people, as the government. The official government, they recognize us. So there's one of two possibilities. Either the official government gets with the program, or the people will get impatient with it and recognize us. And as far as America collapsing, it is a lot like the Soviet Union. Lithuania was a placeholder for the collapse of the USSR for a few years, and then Russia and Ukraine and Kazakhstan and Belarus all pulled out and collapsed the Soviet Union. That's the effect we can have. When we liberate California from the US, it won't be like Lithuania going. It'll be like Russia going from the Soviet Union. What's the point after that? Okay, so that's what we can offer, is liberation.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Matt, for that. I will just note, Matt, as far as the news, yes, there's a lot of missing things, but what we have to see as a positive or the silver lining in that MSNBC broadcast was that they are actually saying things that they never did or acknowledge at all. So, you know, take that just as a silver lining, but I agree with you. So now we're gonna go to Hal is next. Let me unmute you, see if you're there.
Hello.
Yeah. Okay, Hal, you're on.
Thank you, Daniel.
Sure.
Okay. As per usual, I'm going to disagree to a certain degree with what's been said. I don't believe this mean that what we're seeing now is the collapse of America. I think America's already collapsed. What you're seeing, I mean, basically, it's a question of semantics. When did the Titanic actually sink? Was it when it went below the waves, or was it when it hit the iceberg?
Ooh.
And I believe that America hit that iceberg a while ago. So what we're seeing now is basically the carpet's getting squishy. People are starting to realize what's going on. They're starting to, you know, see the water getting closer and hearing the band play up, and everybody's basically trying to figure out if they're going to get on the lifeboats. This is where we're at. This is where I see us. All of these signs, we've said it since the beginning. We said this since 2016. Trump is not the disease. Trump is the symptom. Symptom of a country that basically has long ago and far away lost its way. With jumping in bed with corporations to whatever, to either enrich the rats as the ship sinks, or to try to prop it up a little longer so they can stuff their pockets for a little more time. Now, you want to know what the best thing about these protests are? You want to see it? Let me share something for you. All right. Give me one sec. Can I screen share, Daniel?
Yeah, of course.
Host is disabled. Can you enable me to screen share?
I don't know how to do that exactly. Let me see. Screen share.
I think you right click on their name and you go make host, if I'm not mistaken.
Just for a moment, I promise to give it back.
Right click on their name.
You right click on his name and say make host. I think there's an option to make host. We'll do it.
Oh yeah, make host. Okay, let me see. That works. Change. So I have to change host. So I'm going to change to you, I guess.
Okay.
Go ahead. Can you do it now?
Let me try. Let's see. Looks like it. Just give me a second. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. This picture is Santa Monica. It's one of the larger portions of the protest, if you can see what I'm saying. Now, we're used to seeing this. Shankar will tell you that this is fairly normal. This is pretty much the norm with us. Give me one sec here. And see this one? This is Los Angeles.
No, still on Santa Monica. Hell.
Is it? Okay, let me bounce that one out or move to another one. Let's see. Screen sharing has stopped. Anyway.
Okay.
And of course, let me really put one up there. Not that one. I've seen that one. One sec. Forgive my technical disabilities. I'm experiencing old guy with technology syndrome.
Okay.
Al,
yes.
If you do this, you can choose to just share your screen rather than a particular application.
I realize.
Okay, because we've had to do this in college.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And this one. Come on, share. Oh, you're just gonna be a pain in the butt.
Well, just tell us, like, what does it show?
Oh,
never mind.
Well,
It's doing it.
there it goes. There
See
it goes.
now, that's my beloved Long Beach.
Yeah.
Those are my people. You know what you're not seeing? No American flags. Go to protest shot after protest shot after protest shot. You're not seeing American flags. The reason you're not seeing American flags is, and Shankar will back me on this one, is that these groups have come to realize that the USA is the enemy. America's the enemy. Why would you fly a flag of the enemy? We know who flies that American flag now. It's the Trumpers and the right-wing groups and the militias. They bathe themselves in it. They look like the 4th of July threw up on them. What we're seeing, for California's sake, is that the people here in California are starting to realize that America no longer represents them. So I'll leave it right there.
Thank you, Hal. Somehow now I don't know how to regain the whole position. Does anybody know how to do that again?
The lower right of your screen should be something that says "Reclaim Host" or something. I think it's the lower right of the screen.
Yeah, I got one that says "End." I don't have.
That might end everything. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good idea.
I'm not sure.
Lower right.
You should have a maybe at the top. I'm not in control, but there is a button somewhere to say "Reclaim Host." I'm trying to. I think it was in the lower part of the screen, but I could be wrong.
Lower reaction, top chat, participants. No stuff. Yeah, I can't seem to. I thought if I went back to Helen or me, I would be able to give myself.
This might help. It says that there's a link called Claim Host at the bottom of the list of participants.
Participants, let me see. Reclaim host. Okay, thank you, Anna.
You're welcome.
I think I have it back now. Let me see. Yeah, okay. Okay, so now get back to the view. Okay. So let me see, make sure everybody's muted. Okay, so we're going to go next to the gentleman with the California Republic flag behind him, Bob.
That would be me,
Yes.
known as Bob Scott, but I'm actually Bob Timlin.
Okay.
Bob Scott is my social media name.
That's what confused me. I knew Bob Scott, but not Bob.
Well, Bob Scott is social media because I was getting harassed under Bob Timlin, which is a very uncommon name. So
okay.
That's my alias, so I don't get harassed. Okay, anyway, to answer the question, yes. I also like what Hal said. I agree. Yes, it's broken but, or collapsing, but when did that start? That's a good question. I think it was never right to begin with, if you go back. And the Senate is definitely worse than the Electoral College. 2 per state, regardless of population. Trump got in on the Electoral College. These are all vestiges of slavery, by the way. I'm sure you understand that. But he got in on the Electoral College against the popular vote. But you also have a Senate that's even worse. That's not nowhere near democratic. What we're looking at in a few years is a Senate consisting, 70% of the Senate will be controlled by 30% of the population because of rural states that are overwhelmingly white. And that's going to make it even worse. But what the issue with Trump, with the Electoral College, is that because the Senate is not democratic at all, it didn't remove him, even though there's such overwhelming evidence. It didn't remove him. If you had a truly democratic Senate, he probably would have been removed. So the system is broken for a lot of reasons, and it really all goes to slavery. So it's kind of interesting that, or maybe it's ironic that the death of a black man, the descendant of slaves, is kind of really sparking or adding on. It was collapsing a long time ago, but it's really, maybe it's the final straw. And so it's really broken since the beginning, and it's very undemocratic. As far as you're going to have, with demographic changes, you're going to have no majority around 2040 or 2045 or so. And this is what really has triggered these, I think they're very paranoid and ignorant white people, to be honest with you. I hate to say it, but they are. And I think they're like, oh my God, we're going to become a minority. They're going to want to get even or something. I don't know. It's kind of ridiculous. But, I think that's really what has driven Trump. They're kind of stupid, but they're not that stupid. They see the changes. As far as like the military is concerned, I kind of agree with Hannah that they will not support Trump. First of all, the military is about 40% people of color, and that doesn't include, let's say, LGBTQ people and progressive whites. And polls show that Trump is definitely underwater with the military, especially the officer corps. We see the generals that are retired going against him. And if retired generals are going against him, you know that active duty are too. They just can't say anything. So the military won't support him. As far as changing allegiances go, I agree with that. I mean, they're probably going to go with who's got the money, and that's California and the other blue states, and also who is not autocratic. At least the bulk will, the enlisted corps will, because they're mostly people from our communities. So it's definitely broken for sure. I believe that there's going to be a civil war or unrest, probably not in every state, regardless of who wins. If Trump wins, I think the left and blue states are going to be like, no, we can't deal with this 4 more years, and you'll just see probably starting with California secession. If Biden wins, and he probably will take back the Senate, I think they've got at least a 50-50 shot at that, and they're going to retain the House, maybe gain some seats. If Democrats get full control of the federal government, the right is going to go ballistic. And I think you're just, it doesn't matter who wins the election, actually, at this point. I really don't think it matters. It's over, period. It's just gonna, I don't know, they'll definitely be, I don't know if there'll be much of a civil war in California because the right is badly outnumbered here. Although there's a lot of them and they have guns, so we have to be vigilant. So there definitely could be some violence here. There's probably gonna be violence everywhere. And we need to prepare for independence. And we're definitely in good shape. And probably a lot of our neighbors are going to want to join us. We see this pact with Oregon and Washington and Nevada and Colorado. I think that they are more or less on the same ideological page as us. And they're going to want to go tag along with California because of our size. They really would have a hard time making it on their own. So they're going to want to have some sort of EU type of arrangement with us. So there's going to be the California's independence is going to be broader than just California. I don't know how it's going to shake out, but I'm sure you're going to see, I have family, my mother's in Nevada, she's been there for 10 years. And I can tell you that, number one, Nevada is completely dependent upon California's economy, where half their tourists come from California. Number two, they're basically on the same ideological page now. They're both their senators, their governor, 3 of their 4 House seats, and their state legislature are all Democrat. The demographic changes happening there are starting to look a lot like California. So, I mean, I can say for sure Nevada, but I think even Oregon and Washington are going to want some sort of arrangement with us because they're probably not big enough to survive on their own. California is, but they're going to want to tag along. So when it happens, we're going to see a broader, I don't know, call it an EU type of arrangement or something. I think that's what's going to happen. I agree with Matt that California is just the first, right? I believe Cal exit is going to lead to a broader exit, just like the Soviet Union. One left and then the others followed. And it's going to happen very quickly. That's my opinion. I think that's about it. Those are my thoughts.
We're out of time anyway.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob. All right. Next, we're going to go to Joe Payne. If you're there, Joe, are you there?
Hello.
Oh,
Can you guys hear me?
yes, we can.
Yes, sir.
You're on.
Awesome. All right. Just a couple of points. One, I want to thank Daniel for bringing up this point as a discussion. I think that's a bold move. It takes a lot of balls to do that. Thank you for taking the leadership on that. Okay, a couple of things that I want to bring up. And
Joe, could you speak up closer to the microphone?
Yeah, if you can get
Oh,
close.
sorry.
Could
Can
you
you
move
guys hear
up
me?
closer to the mic? Say
Let me
something
do
again, Joe.
this.
There you
Let
go,
me do
right there.
this.
You're doing good now. Now start, please,
Let
Joe.
me do this. It'll be a lot easier. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, better.
Yes.
Way better.
Sorry, I got to put you on speaker, so I don't know if there's any, if you guys are hearing yourself at all, but.
Nope. No, it's good. You're good to go.
It's good. It's good.
Okay, so one, I do want to respectfully disagree. And first off, as a disclaimer, I am in the process of creating an organization where I'm going to be going to red states and asking them for money. And it's kind of hard to go and spit in someone's face and then ask them for a check. So just right off the bat, that's my kind of disclaimer. That's my first point. Second, though, I do want to say I'm just coming into this movement, and I think that this, just as my humble opinion, should be the most inclusive that should possibly be. I think that when I'll be honest, when I first saw that was kind of a new rule, that kind of put me off. That as someone that's just kind of getting into this, just joining, it kind of seems like, whoa, like they're kind of putting hard line rules on this. Now, I'm not getting into this movement because America's failed. I'm getting into this because I see as California is different. And I see us as underrepresented in Washington. I see us as culturally, economically, socially, we are just very, very different. And a lot of Americans really don't even see us as American. They see us as some kind of weird foreign national, group of people that are way out on the West Coast. And that's why I'm getting into it. So it's not because America's failed. Now, I think that personally, we can all take that opinion, but when you're trying to get new people into the movement, they're going to see that and that's going to turn them off. I think we need to be really careful with the wording that we use in the movement, that not to say things like that might turn people off or away from the movement. Which kind of brings me into my next point, is negotiation. So we're asking 20 million Americans, roughly, to not be American anymore. We're also going to be asking the U.S. Senate and the Congress to get out, because we have to negotiate our way out of this. It's not going to be just enough that we all vote on it. So we're asking Americans to let us out, hey, we think that you guys failed, but can you also do us a favor and let's make this all legal? They're not going to want to if we go and spit in their face and say things like that. I think also someone mentioned earlier about the word fascism being brought up or not being brought up, but only recently. And I want to say that there was conversation about fascism back under Bush, but all of that stopped when Obama got elected. But it got brought back up when Trump got elected. That's all going to stop when Biden gets elected. So if we're saying that, America's a failed state, that's all going to go away in the news as soon as Biden gets elected. I think that we should align ourselves with a different reason, and that being culture. We need to say that our culture is different, and we want out because our culture is different, and not just because America is a failed state. But now, as far as negotiation, I think that we may have to do things like say, to the American government, hey, look, we'll stay on the US dollar for X amount of years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever it may be. And that's going to be a hard thing to do if we're starting from the point of America as a failed state. We also shouldn't want America to be a failed state, because they're going to be our biggest trade partner. they are our neighbors to, the east and the north, and they're the biggest country in North America, even after we leave. So we are going to have to be really careful with that as well. We also don't need to take the position of a failed state. If the U.S. is truly a failed state, we'll leave on our own. We won't even be needed. So we don't even need to take that position. All we need to do is just say, hey, America's different than us, and let's go do our own thing. And people will follow that. We really don't need to take that hard line of that. I think it's a overstep. I see where it's coming from. I don't think it's needed. But with that, I'll let you guys go. I'll end there. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe, for your opinion.
I'd like to respond before we go to the next person.
Me too, but I'll let Marcus respond first.
So I just want to say, everybody, I hope you saw what Joe did. Joe just joined, and he gave his opinion. And he said, I don't agree with everything you're doing. Awesome. Great. That's what our conferences are for. You don't have to agree. And we're not a cult. I keep pounding that home. So Joe, awesome work. I really appreciate you having the friendship and courage and respect for us, Joe, that you would know that we would respect your opinion and that we can have intelligent debates. That's what these conferences are. So great work, Joe. Everybody, please be more like Joe. That's awesome. Here's the second point. I've always said we are, and I started this conference off saying this is Daniel's vision. I back Daniel's vision. Hannah has a different vision for her PAC. Hannah's making a PAC that's going to reach out to Californians and say, I didn't say secession. I just said, isn't it cool when we act more independent? Joe has a PAC that's going to reach out to conservative Americans and say, wouldn't America be better without him? Daniel has a conference that's designed exclusively for Californians to get them more radical. Shankar's creating politicians and a slate designed the way that he sees it fit. Hal is organizing a website for all of the people here, California Independence Movement, that's designed how he sees fit. So Joe Payne's right. He does not have to agree with this. However, this conference will always have the perspective that America's broken, it can't be fixed, and it's time to secede. That does not mean that Joe has to agree with that, or Hannah, or Hal, or Shankar. It just means that while we're here at this conference, that's what this particular conference project is saying. Joe, when you launch your PAC, I totally get that you're going to have a different phrasing, and you're going to go, we're against that, we're not saying that, and you should totally do that. We're backing visions. We are backing visions. People have different marketing angles. And if anybody's in doubt, ask around. I have fought for all of you to be able to push your particular marketing angle. And I've always said, even if I don't agree with you, try it. If the market responds to what you're saying, you're right. We should all change our tune and start doing it. But let's see the market respond. So Hannah had some ideas on the California Liberation Pact. And not everybody liked that. But I said, why don't you give Hannah 5 minutes, see what happens. Let's see what happens first. And not everybody liked the Calm Pact, but a lot of people did. And Hannah already has 500 new members who never joined the movement because she tried a different phrase. But I also got to tell you, these conferences that Daniel's doing, which take a slightly different marketing angle than Hannah's PAC, are also growing. And so different marketing angles. You are not controlled by the movement. No one controls the movement. There are 4 organizations, Yes Cal, CNP, Independent California, and CFC. If you join one of those groups, you have to do what they say. But if you don't, or like Shankar, you're saying, hey, I, Shankar, am getting everybody together to run politicians. If you want to help me, great. You don't want to help me, fine. Let's get you with your own started. So Joe, thank you for the critique. Everybody, please feel free to critique. We have separate visions. Joe, please don't feel that you have to back this up at all with your PAC. Your PAC is your vision, brother. It's going to be the way you see. This is Daniel's vision. Hannah has one, Hal has one. We're backing each other up on that. I'll leave it there. Daniel, take it away, please.
Yeah, just a quick response because I don't want to get into this. Joe, you're pretty new to the movement, which I realize we come from like 4 years of Shankar, Hal, many of us, Marcus, from different movements that started 4 years ago. One was CFC, then there was CNP, there's Independent California. But what I've come to personally, and maybe a few other members, is that the nice way to get Californians and tell them, oh, we agree with all those values. That we have different values, that we would be better. We've used all those arguments. We would be better off as California. We wouldn't pay the federal tax. We have. I can answer any of your things that we would be better as Californians. We used that. CFC used it, but Californians did not react to that. They did not react to the fact that they would be better off. They just saw themselves as the United States. And as the United States, if we change Congress, if we do this, then we'll become what we used to be and stuff. Okay? So my take on it, why it's a little bit more radical, is because if Californians are not desperate, if they don't see that the United States is a failed state, which I don't want it to be. You're saying we shouldn't want it to be. I don't want it to be. It's just a fact. It's just if you look at everything, it's a fact that it is. Now, you may not believe that. A lot of Californians don't believe that. But you know what? Those Californians, they're not going to believe in independence either. You know why they're not going to believe in it? Because they don't feel pressure. They don't feel that Californians doing that bad right now. We have our own laws. We have that things. Until they feel that protesters or the military comes in and they're physically and morally attacked, and they see that that's what's happening right now. What we're trying to show is that's what's happening. Until they see that, 4 years from now, Joe, you can do your pack and things, but you'll realize the same thing at a certain time that
okay.
Of that. So that's what I wanted to say. And you're welcome to all the opinions and everything, but like Marcus said, yes, everybody has their own organization, their own thing, and that's what counts. But I want to give back. Marcus never got to answer the whole thing.
Dude, could I
Shankar, go to Shankar. Go to Shankar.
Hey, Joe. So all your observations are 100% correct, man. They're all correct. I think what's going to end up happening is you're going to find the lines getting blurred between why California and America bad. So what the task at hand is not convincing California to be independent. You have to convince people that have been trained and pretty much brainwashed since elementary school that they're Americans, and you have to convince them that they're not Americans, that they're Californians first. And that's the task at hand, is convincing people that you're Californian and not American. And you're right, it's going to be culturally. It's going to be pointing out the cultural differences, the economic differences, and when pointing those out, it does look like you're saying America bad, California good. So that is the battle that we have in this movement. And I see you, Marcus. Hold on one sec. Just to go back to my candidate roster. Look, there are 4 organizations. CNP just looked at my roster. In 2 weeks' time, they're going to be backing up the candidates that they choose off the 14. I think they're going to choose about maybe 9 or 10 of them. So now we have the whole movement here as clenched as a fist here, ready to go forth with this candidate roster. We're still, and more people are putting their names in the hat. Just a reminder, I know this is not the platform to do it. If you want to put your name in, this roster isn't for people to run. There's 3 serious candidates that are wanting to run. They're running for a mayor, a county supervisor, and another county supervisor position. The rest of us are on the roster. It's just for publicity. This is to come out in conjunction with the Initiative for Independence, and this is going to scare the crap out of the establishment. And that's what all this is. That's all this is. So that's all I got to say. I think Marcus out in.
One last comment, if I could. One last comment, Daniel, and then we'll go. I just want to say, Joe, and Hannah. And this is something about the PACs. So in the movement, we're typically trying to reach out to Californians. Okay, so there's a way we're going to package that. But I want to point out that Joe's asking a question that's directly related to what Hannah was dealing with. When Hannah was writing articles for her PAC, she was saying, well, maybe we could work with the Democrats and maybe we could do that. And people were like, whoa, 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 we're with CalExit. And I go, whoa, whoa, whoa. Hannah's reaching out to a different group of people. And so she has to have a different marketing angle. She's not reaching out to people who said, I want to secede. She's reaching out to Californians who are skeptical. She can't go with them with the same hardcore CalExit supporter talk. Same thing. Joe is not reaching out to Californians with his PAC. He's reaching out to conservative Americans. So he probably is going to need a different marketing angle. I'll leave it there. The PACs are not CalExit orgs. They're marketing vehicles. They will have to have a different way to do things because they're not trying to reach out to the same people. You simply put, you can't reach out to demographic A, B, C, D, which are all different groups and have the same message. They don't work that way. So I'll leave it there. Daniel, have we gone through everybody having a turn to speak on this topic?
Except you.
Okay, let's skip me. I want to go to the second part.
Okay,
so Daniel, I'm going to...
If we're going to skip that, Marcus had something to say real quick, I think, right?
Oh, yeah.
That response?
Yeah, sure.
So let me unmute you, Marcus.
I just had a comment, and I understand that and this is going to be really brief, and I understand that I'm coming from a little bit of an outsider, but I have a bit of advice. The first one is a quote, and it's by John Locke, and if you're not familiar with him, look him up. He said, there is only one thing which gathers people into seditious commotion, and that is oppression. And what you're seeing right now is that. The second thing, and so in different communities, you're going to see different levels of oppression they're willing to put up with before they say, I've had enough. To your point about that there are different ways of approaching this and different marketing, absolutely. I want to offer some advice from a libertarian hero of mine. His name is Murray Rothbard. And Rothbard suggested that people act, or that they speak radically and act pragmatically. In other words, you speak what you want. Whatever that goal is, you want an independent California. You say, I want an independent California. But when you act, you take every single step you can. If what you can do is more independence, then take that step. If it's in the direction that you are moving in, take that next step. For instance, I don't agree with taxation. I believe taxation is theft. So I say taxation is theft. But if they can reduce taxes by a 0.1%, I'll take it. And I think that within your movement, you need to allow for whatever incremental growth you can get, while at the same time being very clear that your goal is a free and independent California. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Very well said.